Did Homer get taller after he de-transformed? Kind of the opposite of like what happens with Kamen Rider Chalice. Continuing right from where we left off last week, the Boonboomger were trying to get a handle on their purple-tinted situation. Honestly, in this day and age, who wouldn't want to? Said Six Ranger had gone to meet with the villains about possibly taking on another job. Of course, like many streaming services these days, they tried to take advantage of the 30-day free trial, which they did establish in the previous episode, but like said services, he had already retracted the benefits just as they wanted to do business with him. Can you tell that I'm speaking from experience? I want my money back, Bezos! However, the villains did have a contingency plan, as they had taken his precious racing train card that again we saw in the last episode. I point this stuff out because I do like how this show is seemingly learning to slow things down a little and tell a bit more of a proper story. I mean, I have been enjoying the show so far, but the pacing has felt a little off, so episodes like this do help to address that issue. But yeah, having done something that happened to me a lot as a kid, Homura was forced to cooperate with the villains to get back his card by defeating the Boonboomger. Thus, they also decided to give him some support with the sword monster again, though there was at least a storyline reasoning for this cheap reusage of a costume, as the idea was that it was supposed to be stronger than last time, but as we'll see, that won't really matter. At the same time, Taya had been keeping track of an old friend of Homura's who would be important in just a sec, but first... Magnum! Ready? Fight! The two had a brief but decent fight for what they were allotted. It ended in a stalemate where Homura revealed his backstory that was very Star-Lord-y. Yeah, maybe it's because it is legit my favorite MCU movie series, but I could only really think about Peter Quill in the scene with a young boy who ended up leaving Earth after losing a parent, though in his case it was both of them, so very understandable. Also, I guess that would kind of make Bune Diesel the Yondu of this story, even though he's named after a different actor who played the tree in those movies. But yeah, while it would have been nice to have also have learned what happened to his parents to drive him into such despair, we might get those answers in a future episode. Besides, the actual focus of this episode was more on this card that just so happened to come from that friend that Taya had been tailing.
Oh, how convenient!
Actually, it gets even more overly convenient than that, but first, we did get a legit really good exchange between Taya and Homura, as the former assured the latter that now that he understood more about his situation, he wanted to lend a shoulder for him to lie on. Yeah, have I mentioned yet how great the acting in this show is? Like, I don't know how hard it is to actually pull off, but I can't imagine making an eye twitch like that is easy. Stuff like that made the scene of Homura finally realizing that there were people, aside from the cleaners, who could support him through the difficult times hit all the harder. However, as if he didn't need any more reason to want to betray the Hashiran, they just so happened to take some people hostage that included... Yes, it is all a bit of a stretch, but I don't mind it too much, as it is meant to highlight that Homura has always had connections to this planet, probably not even limited to just his old friend, but he chose to ignore them as he has been in such a negative mind state ever since he lost his parents. Granted, it is still a bit ridiculous that he managed to instantly recognize his old friend, even though it has to have been at least a decade or two since they last met. Like, this is coming from a Japanese guy, and well, I could have been that kid. Though, again, whatever, as at least this is all going to pay off very nicely by the end. Anyway, Diesel managed to save the hostages with some help from the rest of the Boonboomger, whom Taya had wisely had tailed the baddies. As a result, not only did they save everyone, as even the egotistical Diesel had to admit that he would have been able to do it alone, but Gemba also managed to get the card back because I guess he figured it was odd that the non-Mizuki cat would be interested in trading cards. With that, Homura was able to terminate all of his dealings with the Hashiran, whom he decided to take out a personal cleaning job out on, which Taya offered his services to help deliver their heads to him. And with that, the team was now fully assembled and ready to fight.
あとは任せますよ。
Hey, I can finally use this clip how it was meant to be used.
あとは任せたわ。悪者どもの超鉄板敗北フラグだ。
With that, we then got the main battle of this episode that again highlighted everyone's unique and interesting fighting styles, though of course in spite of everything going on, Joe remained the best boy, at least when it came to throwing down. And in spite of being powered up, the sword monster was again defeated, probably because of the aforementioned flag. However, and rather than turning into a giant monster, Yaokai turned it into a giant version of its original form, which was a fake Boom Boom classic. Thus, the villains got into their evil mech to have a classic sword fight with the Boonboomgers. They got the upper hand thanks to their flying sword, and some help from the stagehands off screen, I think. However, since the Mock Robo didn't get a full introduction last week, the Sixth Ranger was able to come in for the save. This led to a bit more of a CGI fight than I'd usually like, but at least it was justified, as practical flying effects would be difficult to produce, and it did lead to a clever way of defeating the Boom Boom Killer, albeit not in the most graceful of manners.
A raiment up your butt!
Anyway, after the villains blasted off again, Homer met with his old friend.
これ、お前のレアカード。
Dude, what'd you do to this? I can't resell this! Nah, of course, he didn't give a crap about some piece of cardboard, and was just happy to know his friend was well and happy, and they even had some tea together. However, the episode ended ominously, with Shabe seemingly spilling the tea to some of her higher-ups. Well, at least she's finally doing something again in the show. This was a pretty solid conclusion to an introduction for a Sixth Ranger. As I pointed out, the story flowed very nicely from one episode to the next, and even got around some of the show's usual pacing issues by slowing down at least a little. Sure, it did suffer from maybe one too many plot conveniences, especially in this episode, but it still didn't take away too much from the Purple Star-Lord. One thing I will praise about this arc was how they got around a lot of the usual Sixth Ranger tropes. The ones they kind of did, like the evil ranger, or at least antagonistic in this case, was far more character-based than anything simple brainwashing could produce. Homura does have a very negative perception of his home planet, as it remains a constant reminder of what he lost. So much so that he even tried to ignore all of the positives in spite of keeping his old friend's card close by. By the way, good visual storytelling by having it be so beat up, suggesting that he had taken it with him even into battle. Homura completely overcoming his issues with Earth should make for a good story arc, especially as we learn more about the cleaners too. Until then, much like with Ryu Saito, I gotta give his actor Yu Miyazawa a lot of praise for this performance. Like, I swear, he looks like he's just about ready to cry here. Action, as always, was good, and even the Mock Robo's proper debut fight featured as much practical effects as they could fit in. With the team fully assembled, hopefully we can also start to learn more about the villains of the show, even though the Team Rocket portion of them remains as entertaining as ever. And overall, this is a good way to close out the introduction for the Purple Warrior, who hopefully will be able to make it rain with his toy sales for this show's sake. The summer 2024 of anime does pretty much start tomorrow, and in case you're wondering what we'll be covering for this channel, well, we did kind of make a video for that. Minor correction that I should point out is that we were off with the air dates for Grandizer U and Suicide Squad Isekai, as both actually air on Fridays and not Saturdays, though our points regarding them all still stand, which if you want to know what they are, well, go check out the video, and we will start doing some U reviews next week. So, look forward to it. Until then though, farewell for now my friends, and if you'll excuse me, I'm just gonna take a little inventory of my cards.